What's going on, y'all? Coming back to you with some more content. So today, one thing that we're gonna get into is the culture shock. I had never been to New Mexico, so I had no idea what the climate was like, what the atmosphere was like. I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. You know what I mean? To be honest with you. So basically, the trip coming in, we took 16 to Atlanta to Birmingham, from Birmingham up to Memphis, from Memphis to Little Rock, Oklahoma City, and through Amarillo. Now, as soon as you get out of the state of Texas and cross into that New Mexico state line, you start to see a gradual change in the terrain. So it goes from green grass and trees to rocks and desert and sand and clay. Now, don't get me wrong, New Mexico does have some parts that's green, you know what I mean? But for the bulk, and even as far as when you're driving and you're looking out, like going through all those states up until Oklahoma, like I said, you'll probably see some trees along the road. Once you hit New Mexico, it's basically open air, you know what I mean? Nothing but space, and you can kind of see out through the distance. That was definitely one of the biggest, like, the first thing that you can see, you know what I mean? That was one of the obvious things that you could see. Definitely a change in the terrain. Because in Georgia, like I said, you can't see the forest through the trees. So many trees, you can't see your neighbor or whatever, depending on where you live or whatever. Like I said, you got so many trees if you're riding along the highway, if you're going from one town to the other, But out here it's real open, and the city is shaped like a bowl, so, but it's also a grid, so it's easy to navigate. But here it is on the east side of the city, and you have the East Mountains, which is Sandia Mountains. That lets you know east, so that's why it's kind of easy to navigate. So the East Mountains, Sandia Mountains, let you know that that's east. And then, but when you get on the west side of the city, when you get up on like 98th and Unser and along those, but 98th, you can still see the east side of the city, from the west side. And I guess that's one thing I forgot to mention. From the east side, you can see the west, and then, of course, now from the west, if you're on that west side, you can see all of the east. And then you have the valley, and those of the ones that grew up here, they know the valley. But basically, along the valley, you have the Rio Grande, and that's kind of basically, we're gonna have to get some angles or get some photos, or as far as how you can see where the Rio Grande is located, because it's literally like I said, along the valley, but you can see that's where like the strip of trees are. Like most of the trees that are in Albuquerque is along like that downtown area along the Rio Grande, because of course the Rio Grande, so there's water come through the Rio Grande, so that's where more of the trees are located. That was kind of, like I said, different as far as the scenery, you know what I mean, and how it's laid out, But another thing, again, we got a video on Black is the Minority, and so that was a culture shock too, black being the minority. I come from a town where, it's mostly black and white, and, Mexicans or Latinos were your minority, you know what I mean? And so now here it is, I get out here, and, for one, it's a faster paced environment from what I'm used to, you know what I mean? So this was city for me. I'm like, oh shoot, I done made it to the city, you know what I mean? Granted, I done been to other cities and realized there's bigger places, but in my mind, that's how it felt. Shoot, I'm in the city, seeing traffic go, But at the same time, when I would go to, the grocery stores or the gas station, or just to go get something to eat, I'm not seeing too many black faces. It was a culture shock at first, it was like, whoa, you know, like, where are the black people? That was almost like my first reaction, you know. But it is New Mexico, so shouldn't have been surprised, right? Beyond the fact that you want to looking for the black people at the same time, you want to run into some women. Like, all right, new city, new women. Where they at? But I was young, 19, coming out here, But one thing I realized though too, when I got into the work environment, is that, and even just around me, like, even though black is the minority, with the majority race, there's still, beautiful women, and all across the board, as far as Mexican, Spanish, Latino, whether, you're Cuban, or Dominican, or Puerto Rican. I met like some Puerto Ricans out here, Asian, pretty white girls too, and we'll touch on that too as far as, being from the South. But the women were beautiful, Filipino, all across the board. My lady now was Dominican, and growing up I never thought I'd run into a Dominican, but here we are. And food, I touched on food as far as just running into people, but that was one thing that was a culture shock too. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of your retail stores are, in a sense, everywhere, meaning like, your Walmarts, your Targets, Best Buy, like Toys R Us, Office Max, Staples, or Office Depot. But even down to food chains though, like your McDonald's, your Burger King, your Wendy's, those places are, kind of somewhere everywhere. And there was one thing too that I noticed, back in the South we have Hardee's. Out here they call it Carl's Jr.'s, you know what I mean? So it's still basically the same chain. They pretty much serve the same thing. The name is just different on this side of the world for some reason. I don't know why, but some things I was deprived of as far as, chain foods, if you would. There's no Zaxby's. So if you grew up in South Georgia, anyone from Tennessee on down, you know what I mean? I know you know about Zaxby's, and Zaxby's be busting, but Zaxby's was my first job. They don't have a Zaxby's here. Boo-hoo, but it's all good. There's a Raising Cane's, which is similar, which is close by, but the closest one is 3 hours in Las Cruces. So, it's kind of deprived of my chicken wings and fries or whatever. Not as many barbecue joints, you know what I mean? So I guess that goes into play with the environment, because, in the South Georgia, you're going to have a lot of barbecue places, whereas here, you have a lot more Mexican and, Spanish places that's out here, in the Latino or Latin fusion type places, you know what I mean, that you have out here, just due to the culture of, being in New Mexico, where, and even natives, the natives have like a food culture out here too, so you're gonna see that they have more food chain restaurants too. Just some of the ones out here, you got like the Garcia's, that's a food chain, even down to the burger joints, Blake's Slaughter Burger, that's like a food chain out here. Bob's Burgers, that's a food chain. Las Cuates, you know what I'm saying, that's like a food chain that's out here, Twisters, you know what I mean, little burrito breakfast joint, you know what I'm saying, but, they be busting too, you know what I mean. Definitely some gains and some losses, you know what I mean. Lost some of the things I was used to as far as food chains, but at the same time, got acclimated to the environment around me, and kind of had to take it for what it was. But at the same time, of course, it did grow on me, and we're gonna make a video about that too, how New Mexico grew on me. When I did start working, one thing that I saw was there was less of white management, you know what I mean. And not to take anything away from anybody or try to boost anybody up, but just, think about the environment that I was in. Again, it's mostly black and white. So on some jobs, granted, my boss at Zaxby's, he was black, you know what I'm saying, but like, his district and regional, anyway. But in that environment, you have more of those white men in those positions of power. Don't get me wrong. You still had your black people in position, but not as far as the majority. And so here, white is also a minority, so you don't see as much as those people in management. You know what I mean? And again, it's could be solely on the environment. You know what I mean? You got more of a Mexican, population, so it's like you should expect to see more of those type of people in power and things like that. Another thing that was also, I say, shocking to me. You know what I mean? But sometimes growing up, you have those young impressionable minds. And even going through school, there's some things that you learn and some things that you may believe to be true. You know what I mean? I say that to say this because personally for myself growing up, going to school, it almost felt like Native Americans didn't exist. You know what I mean? And, I kind of shake my head just because as soon as I moved here, when I got my first job, me and a guy connected, you know what I mean, in a work environment, and he was a Native guy, you know what I mean. Granted, he did grow up in Texas a little bit, so I know he had been around brothers, and that was kind of one thing that he, I guess, would always show me. Like, I don't know if it was a way of trying to connect with me, but like, hey, like, I've hung around black people before, you know what I mean, but show love, you know what I'm saying. Took me to his crib, went there on lunch. His chick had to cook for us, you know what I mean. Had our peace pipe, you feel me? And went back to work, and but me and him had gained a relationship, and he took me more inside of his culture, you know what I mean? But we're gonna make a video specifically about, Native Americans and the Indian culture here in New Mexico as well. But here it was, again, I felt like Native Americans didn't even exist, but here it is, come out to New Mexico, and I see that they're well and alive, you know what I mean? But, that was just something that kind of, like I said, threw me off, but it's like, oh, like, Native, you know what I mean? And they got a certain, jaw structure and face structure. And, we're going to make a video about, how people say black people look alike, and so do Mexicans, so do Natives, so do Latinos. We're going to make a video about that too. Two more things and we'll wrap this up. So, another culture shock that tripped me out, just being a brother man, you know what I mean, and being in the South and growing up around, music and, growing up in the church and just having that music around me. And one cousin listened to New York, Big L, Jay-Z, my brother Outkast, Goody Mob, Pastor Troy, you know what I mean? So, here it is, it's almost like, hip hop is or rap is a black thing, if you would, I come out here and here it is, there's Mexican rap, you know what I mean? Got put on SPM, all the locals know about SPM, you know what I mean? But that's another group this chick had put me on, but it's like Mexican rap, and it's even with the Mexican rap, they kind of do like the Pitbull be rapping and rap in Spanish throughout the song too, and mix it with the Spanish and the English. So like it's pretty dope. Like if I ain't really that fluent in Spanish, but the music and the vibe, you know what I'm saying? It's a trip, just to see or hear Mexican rap, you know what I mean? But granted, I understand, it's an art to it, you know what I mean? So I appreciate the art, the artistry, and knowing that, they do the same thing, and it was a way to connect, you know what I mean? So, and then the thing is that Mexicans listen to rap too, one thing I realized that radio, so radio and internet is available everywhere for the most part, you know what I mean? And so, whereas, this cat back in Georgia may have been popping back in, 05, 06, I think about when Boosie, first got popping or whatever, you know what I mean? But here it is, 2-3 years later when Boosie still got his buzz, here it is, I'm way down here on the west side, Well, I'm thinking like, Boosie only catered to, what I'm saying, the South or whatever, the deep South, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. You know what I'm saying? He only catered to those type of people. But here it is, you got people, just because of the music is readily available, you got people over here that's jamming it too. You know what I mean? But, they would always, or I would always run into, them bumping, black hip hop music. You know what I mean? And granted, yeah, they would still listen to, their local stuff and the things that they like, but it was a way again of, I think, of connecting, just to seeing that, okay, you know they fuck with our music, you know what I'm saying, they listen to our music, so you know obviously they're try to link with us as people, you know what I mean. So that was one of the things that it was, like I said, shocking, but at the same time a way to understand that that was a way that we could connect as well, but I ain't gonna try to make this too long. I think that's all I really got right now as far as just some of the things that were, a culture shock to me. Getting here, you know what I mean? Just seeing the differences of um, the deep south versus the southwest. And that's why I think I don't want to go too deep into the culture shock, because I'm gonna make a video on the deep south and the southwest. And I think I'm gonna go a little more into detail, on some little more personal opinions on some of the things. But that's all I got right now. I appreciate you again for checking out.